Let's talk about something obvious, shall we? I'm not on the couch. And that's because I've said it before and I'll say it again. I live in a zoo. I can only film in the middle of the night when the kids are asleep. And the past few nights, I have been so tired that I couldn't do it. And so I thought we'll just make do with what we have. At the end of the day, this is still the Cashmere Couch. And if you're new here, I am Thulasi, and this is where we speak about the madness and the magic of motherhood. Welcome. So today we're still on the breastfeeding journey, as I can see that a lot of you seem to resonate with the breastfeeding journey. We're going to do a little bit more, and this time around we're talking about the pump culture. And what I mean by the pump culture is what happens when you go back to work and you have to pump at work. It seems like the world is going to understand when you have just become a mother, maybe again. It seems like everybody is going to be okay with the obvious fact that you are going to have to pump at work. And bringing your pump along is not going to be a problem. You have everything. Think again. I want to remind you if you have forgotten, and I want to let you know what you can anticipate if this is the first time you are going to go back to work to pump. And the first thing that you need to take note of is the logistics. So let's talk logistics first. You need a bag. And this bag has to not just fit your work stuff any longer. If you have to bring a laptop to work, then good luck to you, because there's just so much more that you're going to be adding to your bag. So you need a bag that fits your pump, but not just the pump. And this is why getting the pump that suits you is so important. If you don't know what pump to choose, then I had a few suggestions in the video that I'm going to link over here. In my past video, I spoke about buying the pump when you are still at home, have not really gone to work yet, and you're still trying to transition, trying to encourage the baby to take from a bottle instead of just directly latching onto you. And so this pump that you buy at home while you're still at home is going to matter a lot when you have to bring it to work. For me, for my first baby, I got myself a Spectra because it was hospital grade and it was 1 kilogram. So carrying it around was certainly not easy. If you are looking at a hospital grade pump, it is most likely going to be a little bit on the heavier side. And it's not just the pump that you need to carry to work. You have the pump, you have the pump parts, you have the flanges, the stuff that go on your actual breasts. You have those milk packets that you need to keep so that you can get the milk out and store it somewhere, right? So you have those milk storage bags. I think that's what they're called. You have that. And then you have to have wipes. You need to have things that are going to help you to clean up. And then if the place that you work at does not have a dedicated fridge where you can freeze your breast milk, you're gonna want to carry around a cooler bag, or something that helps to keep your milk fresh. And then you're gonna want to carry ice packs to put in that cooling system, whatever that it is that you decide on. You're gonna need all these things. For some of us, we leak. You're gonna leak even before it is time for you to pump. And you're gonna need breast pads, and you're gonna need to go and change them as well. So when I say leak, if you really don't know what I'm talking about, then you're gonna leak. Like, you're going to have milk that comes out and gets your bra all wet. It leaves smell. It leaves you feeling like you're just really sweaty, and it's just overall completely uncomfortable. It's like you are having your period, but then you don't have a pad, and then what do you do, right? So these are the logistics that you need to plan for. Now, I used jujube. I don't know if that's how you say it, but that was my pump bag, or my work bag, because I had to carry my pump in it at the end of the day. Like, I switched between so many brands, so many bags, and then eventually the jujube was the one that fit me the best. But even so, it was bulky. It's not the bag, it's really just the stuff that you have to put in. And then when you try to switch to a much bigger bag, you're just looking weird. So that's something you're going to have to consider before you actually go into work. Now you have the bag. The next question is, where are you going to pump? Now, I have been in a situation where, being South Asian, in South Asian cultures, breastfeeding is beautiful, but it is not something that you can just go out and whip your boob out and just give milk to your baby in public. It's not just something that is widely accepted. Even though we are talking about it on social media, we are trying to move towards that, feeding my baby is a thing. There was a point in time, again, when I was really new to this whole thing. I had my baby in public and we spent a little bit too much time, more than we had planned. And the baby was crying, and I was in an old building. Now, I know a lot of newer buildings are giving us space for this. So you have pump rooms, you have rooms, you have nursing rooms, you have diaper changing rooms, and toilets that are dedicated for the baby and the mother. But what happens when you walk into an old building? You don't have these amenities. And so there was once I was stuck and I didn't know what to do. And I ended up having to feed my baby in the toilet. I was in the actual toilet and I was actually crying because the person in the stall next to me was taking a dump. And here I was on the toilet seat, huddled over my baby in this really awkward position, having just pushed the baby out of my vagina like a few months ago, and I was already having all these pains. So I was huddled over and with no cushion, no pillow, no support. And then this person on the stall in the stall next to me was taking a dump, and it was stinky, and I was just really humiliated that I had to be in that situation. So much so that I stopped really hanging out, going out with my family. um and that is something that could happen if you happen to work in an old building that doesn't have a designated spot for breastfeeding. Maybe you have to do it in a storage room. Now, we are trying to speak up against this. Again, this is something that is being widely spoken about on social media, but I don't know logistically if old buildings can actually do something about it. And I'm speaking from experience in Singapore. I don't know how it is like in other countries. When I have been on vacation to places like India, Korea, with breastfeeding babies, it's just the same thing. I just have to find a spot where I can sit and then like get a nursing cover and then just sit there and be okay with people just staring at me. So the same thing's going to happen when you pump. When you pump, if you don't have a designated spot, I know of a few friends who actually just pump at their desk when everyone's out for lunch, but it's still, that privacy issue is still a thing. Let me know if you have done something about it that has worked for you. The only reason why I stopped feeding or pumping in the toilet was because of a post that I saw on TikTok a long time ago when this person said, would you have your lunch in the toilet? Because essentially what you're doing is feeding the baby in the toilet. And when you pump, the baby's in there, but you're preparing the food for your baby in the toilet. That is very unsanitary, very unhygienic. But if you have a designated spot, or if you have like a room in your office where it's not going to be occupied for a period of time, then speak to your colleagues about it, speak to your manager, your team members about it, and see if they would be accommodating. And that brings us to the next topic of time. Now, every time you pump, it's going to take about 20 minutes. And when you do this, when you have the luxury of time at home, let's just say you do, right? You're going to want to pump for a maximum of 20 minutes on one breast. If you got like a pump and only one pump part, like a flange, like a single flange, because you think that you're going to be able to pump on one side and then the other side for lay, that's not going to work for work. If you're going out of the house, leaving the baby behind, and you want maximum, like, milk, what am I saying? That you want the most out of your pump session, you're going to want to invest in two flanges. You're going to want to pump both breasts at the same time. And now let's talk about that 20 minutes, right? When you have time in your own home, you have that 20 minutes full. And I'm talking about from the first pump to the last squeeze, 20 minutes. When you're at work, the 20 minutes looks like this. 5 minutes to gather all your stuff and leave your office to go to wherever it is that you're going to end up pumping. You have about 5 to 10 minutes to pump, and the entire time, and this happened to me, the entire time you're going to be very anxious because you're looking at the time, you feel rushed, you feel pressured, and sometimes that's going to not help with the oxytocin. The oxytocin is what gets the milk flowing, and the oxytocin is what gets the milk flowing, and the oxytocin is only at its peak when you're happy, when you're relaxed, when you're anxious, when you're sad, angry, all of those negative emotions. Oxytocin's not going to be coming in that much, and that is going to affect your milk supply as well. So that's something to think about as well. To minimize disturbances at the workplace, I have tried to be very compassionate. And this, again, when I was just starting out, right? I was very, very anxious of what people would say, what people would think, how people would judge. And so I was rushing through that 5 to 10 minutes that I had to pump. And I would always pump. Like, I would ensure that one pump session would actually be during my lunch break, which meant that I wouldn't be able to eat in peace. So you've got like maybe 1 hour lunch break and you're just rushing to go get the food and then come in and pump and eat at the same time. That was something that I was doing. And if you're pumping in a space that is not exactly the best area for you to have food at the same time, then you're just going to lose out on the nutrition as well. I know a lot of mothers who just bring snacks to work and then they just snack the whole day and then they come back home and they eat. But the thing is, for your milk to be nutritious, for your milk supply to be good, you need to be hydrated, you need to be nourished. And so your food is important as well. And then we have this problem of time, and I know it's really overwhelming. I know I've been there. I wish I could just give you a hug and tell you, please don't worry about it. If this is helping, please consider sharing this video to somebody else who might really need it, because I just feel like when you have encouraging words from another mother, it just makes so much of a difference, right? So back to the 20 minutes, right? So 5 minutes rushing to the place, 5 to 10 minutes trying to eat at the same time, trying to not get anxious over the time you're pressured. Everything is happening at the same time. And then you need to stop pumping at that point. So that's 15 minutes in your 20 minutes because you need 5 minutes to clean everything up. So in the beginning, I was struggling a lot. I was pumping about 10 minutes instead of 20, and I was bringing all my stuff to the toilet to clean them. And then there's the question of getting them dry, because in a really humid place like Singapore, you want to have your pump pots as dry as possible before you pack them back into your bag, because by the time you go home, you don't know if it's going to get moldy, like over time it's gonna smell, and that is where you're collecting your milk. So you have to make sure that there's no like mold or anything like that. Later on, I discovered the power of wipes. And the thing is, wipes do, and they actually have like wipes that are specifically for cleaning your pump pots. I don't know what they're called. I'll try and see if I can find that out and maybe post a link to something in the description box below. But the point is, if you are going to be doing this, like for me mentally, I'm a nurse, it just wasn't clean enough. So I would have to somehow go for a toilet break, like somewhere in the middle, and then still wash them again anyway, and then dry them as much as possible. I brought like packets, like huge packets of tissues to throw. That's another thing you need to have in your bag as well. So huge packets of tissues so that I could just quickly dry them up and then pack them back in my bag again. But I would also feel really guilty because I had already taken 20 minutes there, and then now I have another 5 minutes to do this. Eventually, I just told myself this is something that is necessary. At the end of the day, it's your priorities. If you are someone who is so into your career, then you have to figure out ways to cut down on the time that you are spending away from your desk. You need all these tools. For me, if I were to use wipes and then just dry my pump parts with tissue and not have to go on that trip to the toilet, I still need to pump again later. If this is like my last pump of the day outside of the home, then I could probably do that and then come back home and clean everything up, or, sterilize my equipment. But if this is the first pump of the day, I still feel like I need to wash everything. So, the washing, that takes time as well. And then you have to go back to your desk and then, settle down and start on whatever it is that, oh, before or after you go back to your desk and you leave everything down, you settle down, you also need to make sure that the milk that you have just pumped goes into the freezer. So if the fridge or the freezer at your workplace is away from your desk, then that's another trip that you have to make. If you are carrying a cooler with ice packs inside, then yeah, okay, you saved yourself that trip. And then how many times a day are you going to pump? So typically it would be a 3 to 4 hourly pumping. So let's just say you leave the house at about 6 in the morning, you pump when you wake up, and you have about 4 hours. So maybe, so back then, right, I was waking up at around 5:36. Let's just say 6, okay? And I would do one pump at 6. The next pump would be at 10, which is when I'm at work, right? And the thing is, I'm a nurse. I don't really have the luxury of time to leave my working conditions because patients are just coming in, right, all the time. And I would have to go get my 20 minutes done and then quickly come back. So I would try and see if like I could break my lunch hour up, or if I could, do something else just so that people won't talk. People won't be like, oh, she gets 20 minutes extra break time, yada yada. This is what people don't understand. It's not a break time. What we are doing is thinking about the baby that's left back at home. We are preparing food for the baby. It is not a time of luxury. And whatever I just described, if you have someone in your workplace who seems a little bit iffy about the whole, having your extra break, maybe send this to them, you know, you can't be subtle about it, but just send this to them. If you are someone who doesn't pump, these are all the things that happen when we have to pump. It's not like we're just sitting there watching some Korean drama or anything like that. It's not a break time. It takes a lot of time out of our own, and it's not comfortable just sitting there. A lot of the chairs that I've sat on in nursing rooms, they're not exactly very comfortable, and you don't really have like a support. If you are having to hold on to the flanges and the bottles, you're gonna want to sit upright with the stuff in front of you, just holding. You don't have hands to watch Korean dramas on your mobile. Okay, let's just put it that way. And so I've actually heard people that I have worked with talking about the fact that I get to go on extra breaks like that. And it really breaks me because, on the one hand, I want to be productive. I was really into my job at one point in time, and I really wanted to do everything that I could. I had reached a point in certain workplaces where they really needed me, and then I felt that loyalty as well. But then there is this loyalty that I have towards my baby as well, right? So there's just so much going on in your head when you're trying to tackle all of these things as tactfully as possible. But I've said this before again, and I'll say it again: people will hate. Haters gonna hate no matter what you do. If you are someone who chooses to formula feed because you want to focus on work, people are going to be like, I thought you just had a baby. How come you're not pumping? How come, you chose not to feed your baby or nourish your baby the natural way? And then if you do this where you are going to be gone every 3 to 4 hours, you try and stretch it 4 hours, they're going to be like, oh, she has extra breaks. Productivity is not an issue if you let me have my breaks, because here's another thing that happens when I try to extend those 3 to 4 hour time points. I get engorgement. And that is very painful. And if it keeps happening, or it happens to a point where it gets so bad, then you have something called mastitis. I've talked about this before as well. Just go watch the playlist with all the breastfeeding videos, and you'll find out that mastitis is a huge thing. Anything that has the term itis at the back, it means the inflammation of. Mastitis is basically where you get this huge hard lump. And 2 years into breastfeeding, like with my second child now, she's still drinking and she eats normal food. So you can see like she doesn't drink as much as a newborn would. And I still can get engorgement. So it's a real thing. When someone has just given birth to their baby, they're away from the child, they need to express this milk out. It's also for the benefit and the health and the well being of the mother. So the next time you point fingers and go, oh, she gets an extra break, think about it. Smokers, if you have smoke breaks during your work time, then you're also kind of having the same kind of extra breaks that we are taking for the purpose of preparing milk for our children. And here's something else that I want to talk about. At the end of the day, these are some things that have helped me. So we've got speaking to your team early. If you are going back to work, I really think communication can help to break the ice. If they don't know what they should be expecting, maybe you can sit them down and talk to them, maybe send everyone a text, maybe bring lollipops to work, I don't know, to just ease things around. Make sure that you have your logistics that really work for you. If you're gonna be someone like me, I have to be facing patients all the time. I'm not like doing a desk bound job, right? So the one thing that helped me and a lot of my friends in the same industry is to get a hands-free pump. And it is going to look weird. It's not going to be as quiet as they say it's going to be. There will be some sort of sound. There's going to be light, things like that. It's fine. Stick it in your bra, walk around with it, put a jacket on, and you're good. If people are going to be upset with you going away from work to pump, then you are definitely going to have people who are going to be upset that you are speaking to them while pumping. That's pretty awkward, to be honest. If I didn't know any better, I would be like, oh, you're pumping as we speak. And lastly, fix your mindset. If you are going to feel very guilty about pumping at work, taking time off from your work to pump, if you are going to be very worried that people are going to be talking about you, please keep this in mind. Mom guilt is real, it's raw, and it's really, really strong. If you miss your pumps and you don't stock up enough in the fridge for the next day for you to go to work in peace, then that's going to also eat your brain. And productivity is going to go down at work because you're going to be so worried about this. And trust me when I say this, this will happen if you give too much of yourself to anything, not just the mom guilt, not just the work guilt. If you just get really guilty, it's going to eat your brain and it's not going to be helpful to anyone. Okay. One last thing, you should anticipate a dip in your supply because now you are going from direct latching to pumping, and it is how religiously you pump, how disciplined you are about pumping, that is going to maintain that supply. So if you feel tired and you just decide to skip on one pump, besides the engorgement that's going to happen, you're also going to get a slight dip. Remember, breastfeeding is really about the supply versus the demand. The more your breasts empty, the more your body is going to think, I need to top this up. Pumping at work is going to be the next level in the game. So please keep in mind that this is a cultural thing, it's also an emotional investment. Cultural because you're expecting your community to support you, but this community does not necessarily have mothers, or it's not full of mothers. It could be that you're working with fathers, you're working with husbands whose wives go through the same thing, but it's not going to be the case for every single person. People will talk no matter what you do. So Don't worry about the things that are going on the outside. Just make sure that on the inside, your mind, your body, and soul, they're all as nourished, well rested. You don't think about all these things as much as possible. I know it's hard, but I've been through it. And at the end of the day, you will too. And having said all that, if you just need a hug, come back, watch another video. Hopefully, I'm helping you out. Join the couch. If you feel like you want something to look at and just feel comforted by, then I do have digital hugs that you can purchase. The link is down in my description box for this video. If you're watching this exactly on the 12th of May 2025, which is when I am filming and also will be uploading it, then a very warm and beautiful Mother's Day to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you soon.